Hold on tight for the next 30 seconds. This is breaking, and it changes everything you thought you knew about crypto's future. Because for the first time ever, we're seeing three of the most powerful blockchain networks, XRP, ADA, and HBAR, move in quiet alignment. And I don't mean rumors or speculation. I mean real architecture, shared partnerships, and overlapping institutional corridors that point to one undeniable conclusion. A hidden alliance is forming right under everyone's nose. If you've been watching this space long enough, you already know the real moves never start with headlines. They start in silence. And right now, what's unfolding between Ripple, Cardano, and Hedera looks less like competition and more like coordination. That's why I'm calling this the secret alliance reshaping crypto's future. At the time of recording, XRP is trading around $2.30, ADA around $1, and HBAR hovering near 30 cents. But price doesn't tell the story anymore. Infrastructure does. Because behind these networks are the same institutions, the same liquidity corridors, and the same global push for real-world tokenization. This isn't financial advice, it's financial awareness. Always consult a qualified professional before making any decisions. I'm not here to tell you what to buy or sell. I'm here to show you how the pieces are being connected, and why the next phase of crypto might not be about isolated coins, but about an interoperable financial grid where XRP, ADA, and HBAR each power a different layer of the same system. So before we dive in, do me one favor, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because YouTube only shows these videos to the ones who engage early. Let's spread the truth that the mainstream still isn't ready to talk about. Now let's unpack what's really going on behind this alliance, because if you trace the lines between Ripple, Cardano, and Hedera, you start to see a triangle of influence forming across the new financial internet. At first glance, these ecosystems look totally different. XRP dominates in institutional payments, ADA leads in governance and on-chain scalability, and HBAR powers enterprise-grade distributed ledger networks. But when you step back, their functions interlock like gears. Each one fills a gap the others don't: liquidity, compliance, and computation. Together, they form something bigger than any single chain. Start with Ripple, the liquidity engine. Ripple's focus has never been on hype or retail speculation. It's been on quietly wiring the backbone of international money movement. From the Bank of England's real-time gross settlement discussions to Japan's SBI corridors, Ripple's technology has evolved into what many are calling the settlement layer of the new financial internet. XRP's design wasn't about decentralized apps, it was about instant global liquidity. Now zoom over to Cardano. Charles Hoskinson has been vocal about governance-first blockchain development, slow, methodical, and academic. But what few realize is that Cardano's recent work on interoperability bridges and regulated DEX frameworks aligns perfectly with Ripple's institutional direction. Cardano's Hydra scaling and its push for regulated DeFi aren't just technical milestones, they're regulatory bridges. Ripple builds liquidity rails, Cardano builds the smart compliance layer on top. Then you have Hedera, the silent backbone for enterprise-grade tokenization. Look at their governing council: Google, IBM, LG, Boeing, DBS Bank. Real corporations with real balance sheets. Hedera's hash graph doesn't rely on mining. It's designed for high-volume, low-latency, energy-efficient transactions, the kind that banks, payment processors, and governments require. Now here's where the dots connect. All three, Ripple, Cardano, and Hedera, have publicly aligned with ISO 2022, the global standard for financial messaging and interoperability. That's not coincidence. That's strategic infrastructure convergence. ISO 2022 is the backbone of the new financial messaging system replacing SWIFT across banks worldwide. And the list of compliant digital assets includes XRP, XLM, XDC, Algo, ADA, and HBAR. But out of all those, only three, XRP, ADA, and HBAR, have ongoing active enterprise integrations spanning payments, governance, and tokenization. Think about that. Ripple connects money. Cardano connects policy and governance. Hedera connects enterprises and data. Together, that's the trifecta of the coming financial internet: money, law, infrastructure. When you combine those three pillars, you get something that looks a lot like the next generation of financial architecture: programmable, compliant, and borderless. Even their leadership teams are showing subtle coordination. In recent months, Ripple's CTO, David Schwartz, has discussed the importance of permissioned domains and interoperability across ledgers, the exact same topic Hoskinson and Hedera's CEO, Shane Higdon, have been emphasizing in their enterprise summits. This isn't chance, it's alignment. Different projects orbiting the same gravitational center, global liquidity synchronization. And it's already happening behind the scenes. Look at the CBDC pilots quietly running across Asia and the Middle East. The Hong Kong Monetary Authority's CBDC test connects Ripple's technology with other distributed ledger systems, the same regions where Cardano and Hedera's enterprise frameworks are being adopted for government-backed projects. That's the connective tissue forming under the surface, the one thing that almost nobody in mainstream crypto media talks about. What we're witnessing right now is the fragmented crypto space beginning to consolidate, not politically, but structurally. The strongest networks are finding ways to interoperate instead of compete. That's why I call it the secret alliance, because it's not a press release, it's an architectural alignment. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The World Economic Forum, the Digital Pound Foundation, and the Blockchain Association of the UK all list Ripple, Cardano, and Hedera in overlapping working groups. These aren't random memberships. These are strategic councils designing the frameworks for tokenized economies. They're literally building the rule book that the rest of the market will follow. That's why XRP's regulatory clarity, ADA's compliance push, and HBAR's enterprise-grade design aren't isolated moves. They're complementary components of the same larger ecosystem. The deeper you go, the clearer it becomes. The next bull cycle won't be led by hype coins or meme coins. It'll be driven by interoperable digital infrastructure, by networks that governments and banks can actually use. And when you trace the technical and institutional footprints, three names keep showing up at the foundation: XRP, ADA, and HBAR. This isn't about competition anymore. It's about convergence. You can feel it, a quiet gravity pulling everything together. While the world argues about spot ETFs and short-term price swings, the real transformation is happening under the surface, in boardrooms, banking corridors, and data centers where code is slowly replacing bureaucracy. What started as three separate missions, Ripple building liquidity rails, Cardano engineering compliant governance, and Hedera creating enterprise-grade tokenization, is evolving into a shared architecture of value. It's the convergence moment no one sees coming because it doesn't announce itself. It just starts working. Think about the broader pattern. Every major technological revolution begins in fragments. The internet wasn't invented in one lab. It emerged from dozens of networks stitched together by protocols that allowed communication to flow seamlessly. What TCP/IP did for information, ISO 2022 and interoperable ledgers are about to do for money. That's where XRP, ADA, and HBAR meet, the protocol layer of finance. Ripple's liquidity networks ensure value moves instantly and globally. Cardano's governance frameworks ensure it moves legally and transparently. Hedera's distributed infrastructure ensures it moves securely and efficiently. Three systems, one outcome, a programmable global liquidity grid. And here's the part most people underestimate. Once those systems interconnect, there's no turning back. Banks, corporates, and governments won't revert to the days of three-day settlements or pre-funded accounts when they've tasted instant, auditable finality. It's like asking someone who's used email to go back to fax. This is why the term, the secret alliance, isn't hype. It's a technical inevitability. Ripple, Cardano, and Hedera are each solving different halves of the same equation: trust plus speed. Adoption. And adoption is scaling fast. Ripple's corridors across Asia and the Middle East are expanding. Cardano's government-backed identity pilots in Africa and Europe are quietly operational. Hedera's Enterprise Council just onboarded new Fortune 500 companies focused on tokenizing real-world assets. That's not speculation. That's infrastructure deployment. But here's where it gets even more strategic. The macro environment is aligning for the first time in years. The Federal Reserve is preparing additional rate cuts. Global liquidity is thawing. And capital that sat on the sidelines during tightening cycles is now searching for yield and velocity. Institutions are done gambling on hype coins. They want blockchain infrastructure that behaves like plumbing, not gambling. And that's exactly what this alliance provides. Pipes for digital value to flow freely. You've made it this far. Give me another 60 seconds because what I'm about to explain will show you why this next phase could rewrite financial history. Liquidity cycles always begin in silence. When markets bottom, volatility compresses, and sentiment turns dull. That's when the foundations of the next wave are laid. We're in that exact window right now. While the crowd fixates on daily candles, institutional liquidity is positioning beneath the charts. Ripple's integration with traditional payment hubs, Cardano's compliance pathways, and Hedera's enterprise tokenization aren't competing trends. They're pre-alignment mechanisms. They're setting the stage for the Great Merge, a phase where tokenized assets, fiat, and digital currencies coexist on interoperable rails. When that happens, crypto stops being alternative finance. It becomes the finance. And XRP, ADA, and HBAR, they'll be the invisible engines powering it. Every time a corporate treasury settles across borders, a smart contract executes, or a tokenized bond clears on-chain, these networks stand to gain, not because of speculation, but because of utility. That's the new paradigm. The value of these assets won't come from hype. It will come from usage at scale, volume, compliance, and trust. Now look at where each project sits strategically. Ripple is embedded with banking infrastructure. It's the bridge. Cardano is embedded with government frameworks. It's the governor. Hedera is embedded with corporate systems. It's the engine. You can already see the outline of the financial internet 2.0 forming, one that doesn't replace existing systems, but absorbs them. The power of this alignment is that it doesn't need retail awareness to function. Institutions will integrate it because it works, and when that liquidity begins to flow through public markets, retail holders will suddenly find themselves sitting on assets that serve real economic purpose, something most cryptocurrencies will never achieve. That's the shift from speculative demand to structural demand, from emotion to mathematics. And this is why, even during quiet markets, you keep seeing massive wallets accumulating XRP, ADA, and HBAR. They're not waiting for hype. They're positioning for integration. Here's the irony. The more silent it feels, the closer we are to ignition. Because every cycle in this space, every single one, moves from disbelief to awareness to mania. Right now, we're still in disbelief. But the infrastructure phase is ending. The activation phase is next. When global finance flips that switch and these interoperable systems begin communicating in real-time liquidity, the market won't rise gradually, it'll reprice overnight. And when that happens, people won't ask, how did XRP, ADA, and HBAR move together? They'll ask, how did we not see this coming? Because this was never random. It's been orchestrated quietly by builders, regulators, and institutions who understood one thing. The next era of finance had to be collaborative, not competitive. So as this silent alliance locks into place, banks on Ripple rails, governments on Cardano frameworks, enterprises on Hedera infrastructure, you're witnessing the foundation of the global liquidity grid. Money that never sleeps. Transactions that finalize in seconds. A system that treats borders like suggestions. This is the dawn of utility-driven wealth creation, not the hype cycle of yesterday. And when history looks back, they'll call this moment exactly what it is, the convergence. The point where technology, trust, and liquidity finally aligned, and where those who were paying attention before the world noticed positioned themselves perfectly for what came next. So if you're still here, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay locked in. Because what's coming next isn't just a price move, it's the financial reset of our lifetime.